Hi, everyone. I'm Allison, and I'm with Pinelands Adventures. I'm here with Monica and Drew, and welcome to the Delaware River Festival virtual paddle of the Rancocas. There's lots more events for the Delaware River Festival coming up this weekend, and the events this weekend do not require advanced reservations, so stop on by. In the chat, you can see what some of those events are. There's a link to the website that'll take you right to that schedule. So here we are out on the gorgeous Rancocas Creek. We are paddling from mile marker 0 on the North Branch down to mile marker 3 about. Rancocas Creek Trail here runs for about 14 miles. There's a few portages along the way, but it's mostly clear and it is stunningly beautiful out here. The Rancocas Creek is unusual in the fact that it runs northwest, which makes it one of the only Pine Barrens rivers that flows into the Delaware River, which is why we're here. The rest of the Pine Barrens rivers make their way down to the Mullica and eventually down to the ocean or some other rivers that flow out into the ocean. This one, we go up to the Delaware River, and then it goes down to the Delaware Bay and makes its way out to the ocean that way. All of the rivers in the Pine Barrens are pretty unique ecosystems. I'm going to flip us around here so we can get a good look at the water. Let's see. So if you can take a look, this is cedar water. It has a little bit of tint. That is because of all the Are we back on? Okay, great. So because we are out in the middle of nowhere, which is so beautiful. But back to that cedar water. The reddish brown tint is because there's such a high iron content in the water. The water is pretty acidic, so it helps to pull some of that iron out of the soil. There's also a lot of tannins in the nat plants around here that help to make water that reddish brown color as well. Also gives the water this amazing woody, earthy smell. So on really hot days here, you can just take a inhale, like you're breathing in cedar. Incredible. Let's take a round and see what we find. Over here we have this tree right here with the reddish leaves. This one is a sweet gum, as Monica just pointed out for us. This is one of the first trees to turn in the fall. You can see most of the other ones around us are still pretty green. Oh, over here we have a squash. In mid-August, those bloom with these tiny little flowers that are super fragrant. It smells like jasmine along the river when they're blooming. Some barrens here. Barrens, because when European settlers originally came, they had trouble getting any of their crops to grow in the sandy soil we have here. The soil is acidic, it doesn't hold water very well, so the crops that came from Europe didn't really take. But you can see from around us, it is far from barren out here. There's over 850 different kinds of plants that call the Pine Barrens home. They thrive in sandy soil. Some of the ones that I'm sure we all know of are blueberries and cranberries. They started in the Pine Barrens. They've been cultivated and are shipped all over the world. New Jersey is still in the top 3 of blueberry producing states.
Got a high bush blueberry right here on the bank.
Or obviously it's not blooming right now. The peak season is going to be mid-June to late July. And at that point, along the rivers here, just paddle along and hold out your hands and put a handful of blueberries. They're everywhere. So the Pine Barrens are 1.1 million acres of these unique ecosystem lands in the middle of South and Central New Jersey. Most of it's in Burlington County, like we are here, but some of it does stretch into Ocean County and Atlantic County, parts through the state. The Rancocas Creek here starts in Ocean County. The headwaters of the Rancocas are in the Pitch Pine lowlands there. Then it quickly makes its way up to Burlington County and goes all the way across to the Delaware, like we were talking about. From where we started to get to the Delaware River is about 35 miles. You can paddle the whole thing, but you do have time to portage around different dams and spillways. It's a beautiful, varied paddle. In pure Pinelands River like we are here. So let's flip around again. We are already starting to get slightly higher, more solid banks. A little further back, the banks are going to be a little soft, more sand, more common for a Pine Barrens River, where we are starting to transition a little bit to be a little bit more of an upland river. As we continue along, it'll eventually become much wider, and the banks will become much higher. A north branch of the Rancocas River. There's also the branch of the Rancocas that spends a little bit more, and then they meet about over 14 miles from where we passed the Rancocas Creek Canoe Trail.
Summer fruit art. Looks really a lot of our native songbirds.
In case it was tough to hear, we have some from the now. The black gum trees that we just passed by, some of them one fruits. Fruit's really important for our local songbirds. Ones like the Pine Barren Warbler and the blue jays, and some robins. We also have a willow oak over here, one of the trees to see out here, as opposed to the more traditional tree that we see all the time. Now, even though this is called Pine Barrens, we're really trees. There's one right there, two more over here, but the majority of trees we're seeing here are different kinds of hardwood trees, mostly because the pine trees require fire in out the other types of trees that want to hang out in this area. So you'll see the Forest Service do controlled burns throughout the pinelands. This is a natural part of the system. It helps to clear out this really thick underbrush that you'll see on the sides here. These pine trees also have a special kind of pine cone that requires fire in order to open up and let those seeds pop out. So that really high heat helps clear the land for those seeds to find a place to root, and also helps the pine cones themselves to open up. This is one of the biggest challenges of paddling in the Pine Barrens. Lots of trees means lots of things to go around if a tree happens to fall down. Oh, can you get us all the way across? Yeah. But if we go all the way over to the side here, this is kind of a cool thing. If you can see that moss along the banks right there, it's a type of sphagnum moss. One of the many industries that was thriving in the Pine Barrens at one point in time was collecting that sphagnum moss to sell it to plant nurseries and florists before there was the artificial foam that could hold onto the moisture. This moss was harvested and wrapped around the roots of plants so that they could be shift the roots wet because saturated by the sphagnum moss. Huckleberry's really ahead of the other ones. Huckleberry is in the blueberry family, so in mid-June to late July. Oh, what was that just started by? The huckleberry will bloom, and they are similar to blueberry, a little smaller, a little darker, and the seeds are bigger, so they're a little crunchier. I sometimes even like them better. There. You see where beaver chewed the branch? Back up a little. This is the prime ecosystems that you'll find beavers living in. On some of the other Pine Barrens rivers, the Mullica especially, you'll see lots of beaver lodges and beaver dams. But yeah, right there is those pointed roots coming up. Beaver. Oh, here's an even better one. That's evidence that a beaver was chewing that and probably wanted to make a dam here.
They love these maples.
Now, these are not the kind of maples that you'll get maple syrup from. So that's not necessarily why they like them. Over here, you can also see some of that sandy soil that makes this area so unique. The sand holds onto water very well. The water just drains right through, which is what makes this amazing aquifer under this area. The water is filtered as it goes all the levels to get into the aquifer, and that aquifer still provides water for rivers. Once upon a time, one Morton wanted to take the water from the aquifer and it to Philadelphia and other more populated areas, having some trouble finding enough water for all of its residents. The state of New Jersey found out about this, realized the environmental implications it would have, and put a law into place to make water being shipped out of Pine Barrens. Once that was awarded, and donated that land to the state, and it eventually became Wharton's Forest, and it's still protected today. Even though it's getting a little chillier out here, the fall is a beautiful and incredible time to come out and paddle. No matter where you're doing it, whether you're on the Delaware somewhere or paddling in the pines, you can see the leaves changing, and it's just a stunningly gorgeous time. There's a little outcropping of these little white flowers. You can see them back there. They are a type of aster.
I don't know the Latin name, but very tough flower, and you find them grown up and down the river. You find that type of flowering in your backyard if you allow it to grow naturally.
Calling them a weed doesn't seem fair. They're very pretty for a weed.
I ironweed, because their stems are so tough, you try to pull one out and they're very hardy and they'll usually grow back.
Speaking of iron, back to the iron that you can find in the water here, one of the first industries that really put the Pine Barrens on the map was iron harvesting. Along the banks, you'll usually be able to find big chunks of what's called bog iron. It's a mix of iron deposits mixed with sand and other rocks. The colonists would harvest this. They started out just by walking along the rivers and picking up the chunks that they saw. Eventually, they moved on to harvesting it by filtering the water and picking up chunks that grew. And the iron was not of very great quality because there were so many elements in it for how it forms. So it was mostly used for things that were not really refined. So cannonballs and cannons, the actual bullets of the Revolutionary War. And it made this area and the areas a little further south integral in the U.S. winning the Revolutionary War. It was so important that the British tried to target the forages at Batsta so that they could bring the Revolutionary Army to its knees if they got rid of its ability to make cannons and make weapons. Luckily, Washington got word of this plan before they got to the forages. Revolutionary militia were able to go out and put a stop to this before they did any damage. You'll hear about the Battle of Chestnut Neck, and that is in the Pine Barrens here. That's what put a stop to the British trying to blow up those forages. Eventually, the bog iron by around the 1820s was depleted. And then a little bit later on, when they discovered coal in Western Pennsylvania, that was a cheaper fuel as opposed to the charcoal and wood that they used to fuel bog iron forages in the Pine Barrens. So once they discovered coal, they moved all those operations out to be closer there, and the bog iron farming started to slowly die off. One of the other things that's unique about the Rancocas is there are houses all along here. So this is private property. Oops. Camera's not switching. There we go. So houses along here. Many of the other Pine Barrens rivers have property on either side, so you can pull up and hang out on any of the banks each. That's obviously not the case. Once we get a little, there is the Rancocas Park, and that's public property that you can hang out at. It's a great lunch spot.
Some Atlantic white cedar over here. One with a really interesting burl.
Oh, yeah, that's tough to see through the trees, but that's
Atlantic white cedar trees.
that cedar is obviously what gives the water its name. That is really strong in tannins. It's also one of the reasons why lumbering and sawmills were so popular in this area before they discovered the bog iron. You'll still see a lot of cedar-clad houses around here and the shore communities of New Jersey. Cedar is naturally water resistant, so on houses that were in areas that were going to get wet a lot, they would put cedar siding on to help prevent the rot. It still works very, very well, except now it's super expensive.
We only have about a fifth of the cedar trees here in New Jersey that we had before the early Europeans arrived in the area. It's an initiative that's been taken on. It was approved by the state of New Jersey quite recently to restore our cedar forests throughout Wharton State Forest and surrounding areas. And the goal is to plant 1,000 acres of cedar trees for 10 years, 10 acres per year. So very, very exciting news.
That's a relatively recent thing that was announced just this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we are on the cutting edge here. Going along here, you can also see evidence of some of the ruins of old different kinds of industries and different communities that used to live along here. A house is blocking it, but if you can see that tiny little brick structure on the other side of that porch, that is a chimney from one of those old communities that used to be here. You'll also see ruins from different types of industries that they tried to have. So sawmills, cotton mills, paper mills. They even had quite a bit of glass making along here. They realized glass making was probably a really great thing to have here. There was the charcoal that they needed that they could get from all the trees. There was the silica, that's the main ingredient in glass, that they could get from all the sand. So when they discovered that, they were really excited that they only needed to import the one last ingredient, the soda that was needed to make glass. They were quite disappointed when they found out that the silica in the sand here, because there's so many different types of nutrients and elements in our sands, that the glass always turned out this blue-green color. It makes really cool looking glass, but at the time people wanted clear glass. So those glass works did not last very long. It is rumored that the first mason jars were made here in the Pine Barrens, which is why you'll still see mason jars with that blue-green hue now. Along the side, you can also see high water lines. This is an area that is slightly tidal. So just like the Delaware River, as water flows into the Delaware, it can flow up here, make the tide a little bit higher here. There's not a huge tidal difference here, as opposed to the lower Delaware, where you can have a 6 to 8 foot tidal difference between high and low tide. It is nothing like that here. Otherwise, these decks would be totally flooded, and nobody wants that. I wish I could say that there was a heron. It's just a cool sculpture of one. Sometimes you will see great blue herons, little blue herons, green herons out here. During different times of the year, you'll see different migratory birds. We've seen osprey flying overhead while out here. We've seen bald eagles. I've heard people have seen golden eagles. I've not been lucky enough to see those. Keep paddling here, but thank you all so much for spending this time with us out here on the Ramp. Hopefully you enjoyed the rest of the Delaware River Festival. Please check out our events, and thanks for spending the time with us. Have a great rest of your day.